everyone, welcome back to All Things Real Estate. I'm Terry LeJoy, your host with Keller Williams Coastal and Lakes and Mountains Realty. Today I'm here with Mike Robicheau from Granite State Inspections. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, Terry. Good morning.
Morning. So we're always going to start out with, tell me who you are and what you do so that the folks at home who are watching can kind of get an idea of what your business is.
Sure. Local home inspector, servicing all of southern New Hampshire. We do residential home inspections to just like a classic home inspection. We go through like 6 main items in a house. We have a bunch of additional services that we offer too. But let me just tell you about some of the things we do as a regular residential home inspection. Okay. 6 main things we'll look at. We'll look at the roof, the structure, foundation, electrical, plumbing, and again, the foundation. So those are the main things that we look for. We basically, residential inspections are different, right? Some are fixer-upper houses, some are move-in ready houses. So our inspection is based on what the information that the client gives to us before we go in there. Okay. Sometimes it's for real estate transactions. Sometimes people are just trying to get their houses ready for to sell. We call that like a pre-listing. Sometimes we do new construction inspection, so before the drywall is even on a house. So we go through it all. Okay. Yep. So
awesome. So let's just back up, and we'll start with a residential. A home that's being sold. Yep. So not new construction, because that's kind of its own animal right there. But you come up to a house, you're going to do a home inspection, and let's just say it's got private water and sewer, so that we'll include those things in today. What is the first thing that you're looking for? Are you going inside? Are you doing outside? Kind of where do you start that inspection?
Well, normally on a nice weather day, right? We have, the snow throws us off a little here in New Hampshire. But normally we'll start outside, we'll go top to bottom, and then we'll go inside, we'll go bottom up. So when I say top to bottom, I'll fly my drone. I do most all my roof inspections with my drone. Sometimes those low-pitched ranches will still get on those roofs and walk them and stuff. But the drones nowadays, we can get up, we can take a look at the chimneys, right? We can see the crowns, any cracking, make sure that all the flashing on the vent pipes and skylights and all that stuff, we get a whole bunch of stuff safely from the ground. And it's a lot quicker. Right. And then also, after we get the roof done, we'll go through the whole perimeter, right? We'll be certainly checking out the siding, right? We'll be looking at the bottom of the foundation. We'll make sure that the grade is correct. And what we end up doing is, and before I go to the inside, we're actually noting all deficiencies that we find so that we can go back to the client and let them know all of these things.
So before you go forward, because you just went through a lot. Yeah. Let's go through that outside a little bit slower. Yep. Because you talked a little bit about the roof. Yep. And kind of what you're looking for there. When you're looking at the siding and you're looking at like windows from the outside and the foundation, what are some things that you're looking for? Because somebody who's watching the show, maybe a first-time buyer that hasn't purchased yet, what are the things you're looking for that you're going to highlight for them? So siding, right? And where it intersects with the windows and the doors and all that stuff. We're looking for any moisture intrusion on the trim, making sure that all the windows and doors are flashed properly, make sure there's no rot, right? Right, that's a big one. Exactly. Especially on wooden windows. Absolutely, right? And some of the newer ones too, even though it's kind of hidden behind the vinyl siding or even the vinyl windows and stuff, you can see some of the staining and stuff like that if it's not properly sealed behind the flashing. So we're going all around to make sure everything is, because water is the enemy of all houses, okay? Yes, it is. And we're looking for any type of intrusions whatsoever on the exterior. And to follow it up a little bit more, like a deck inspection, we'll look at the porches, we'll look at the decks. We want to make sure that it's supported properly, has the correct footings and stuff like that. We want to make sure, more importantly, it's flashed correctly against the house. That way it doesn't, the water doesn't run down on the deck and go back into the sheathing on the house and stuff. So that's where the flashing keeps the water away.
Additionally, another big one for decks and porches is how that ledger board is fastened to the house. That's where a lot of decks fail, when that's not fastened correctly, if it doesn't have the structural screws and stuff like that. Right. So we're not code inspectors, but we know what the code is to be able to point out certain things to say, hey, just so you know, this looks super sturdy, but it doesn't have the structural screws and stuff like that in the deck instance, per se.
And things like that are pretty easy to fix.
Absolutely.
I mean, those aren't big, expensive, big ticket items. Foundation, that is potentially a big ticket item. What are the things that you're looking for in the foundation?
Mostly, so there's all kinds here up in New Hampshire. You can go back to the old school where you see those big chunks of granite stone, and then you get down inside and you can see it's all field stone and mortar and stuff like that. You get the stacked, or you get the concrete block ones. You're making sure that there's no step cracks in those, right? Because all these things, all the cracks in the concrete puts water into your house.
Correct.
So most of the time, if you have a solid concrete wall, north-south cracks in those walls, usually not a problem. You want to see if there's any deflection in those walls and stuff like that. Diagonal cracks and horizontal cracks are the ones we really pay attention to, because there could be some shifting in the house. Could be a footing issue, which could actually just twist the frame of the house, per se.
Right.
So that's what we're looking for in the foundation. And now let me just add one more thing. Drainage on the outside of the house. Yes. Okay. Gutters, they're a pain to actually clean all the time, but they do have a purpose, right? Getting water away from your house, okay, and away from that foundation prevents some of these cracks in the foundation. Right. So does your grade, right? If you have the proper grade so the water can run off. But also in foundation, we'll look for in the basement efflorescence. And it's like a white calcium buildup, powdery that's all inside the basement, means you have some water intrusion coming into the basement.
Right, because correct me if I'm wrong, that efflorescence is caused by water coming into the concrete, and if you have components of the concrete, right? So if something comes in, something has to go out.
Correct.
And the calcium is the easiest thing to get kind of pushed out.
Yep.
But that is an indicator that
and over time it deteriorates the concrete.
Yep.
So that's why it's important to address
some of those. It now creates gaps, right?
Yep. So it'll actually eat the concrete. So.
Oh, okay. Yep. I did not know that.
Yep. So.
Interesting. So one of the things that I see frequently and I look for, if I see two angled cracks at a corner, so I've got one on this wall and one on that wall, what is that telling somebody?
So it could be a footing issue, right? But it's more than likely that would be, it all depends on the style of the crack, you know what I mean? You gotta.
And every house is different, every situation is different.
Absolutely. You'd actually, you'd really have to see that, you know what I mean, to figure out which one that you would actually point to. But that's what we'll do. We'll identify those issues for them and give them the idea. And listen, all these things, they might not even, the house is probably still livable and stuff, but we let the client know, hey, here are some issues, and you can choose to decide what you're going to do with those issues, whether it's a real estate transaction, they're going to buy the house, or they want to figure out if they want to have that fixed prior to moving in, or it's just something to note to say, I got to get to that someday.
Right. So. And I've seen enough home inspection reports to know, probably 95% of what's in the report is for your information as a buyer. This is your house on paper, right? These are the things that you need to know about, things you need to understand, maybe some maintenance things, all those things. It's information.
Yep.
But it's information that, and we'll come back to going inside, but information that for several years, people were waiving home inspections because of the craziness of the market. What have you seen for going back now to some of those homes that maybe somebody had you come in after they purchased and they didn't have that home inspection up front? What are some of those kind of big flags that you've seen pop up without a home inspection that somebody that isn't a home inspector doesn't necessarily see?
Right, and we try to prefix those with those, you know what I mean, to say, hey, listen, there are a lot of great properties, and those ones that call us back afterwards, they bought a move-in ready house, and they said, yep, We wish we would have done it. And I try to not be an alarmist, but I find certain things like weird things like your outside condenser unit. I try to identify shortcuts that happen during the building process or something like that to actually present it to them. And I'll give you a classic one that happens all the time. All right. An outside air conditioner or heat pump condensing unit has a label on it that says the max electrical current or the max breakage could be X.
Right.
And then you go back and you compare it to the electrical panel, and it's not.
Really?
Right? And it's a safety issue. And I'm finding this all the time now. And the reason, the rationale is, I think the electrician just said, all right, the manufacturer calls for this, and they only have this in their truck, and that's what they install.
Oh, wow.
These are some just weird things that we come across all the time, and it's just to identify. It's an easy fix, but it's also a safety issue. And we want to make sure that when you're resting your head down at night, it's because we all go into our home, we feel super comfortable. We want to make sure that all the things that are running behind us is safe and it's not going to become an issue. And that's why we try to point those things out.
I've never seen that come up on one of my inspections. That's amazing that you look for that.
Just a weird one that just keeps coming up, you know?
Interesting.
Yep.
So now go inside the house.
Yep.
And let's take it like pieces.
Sure.
Like go room by room, because some things are going to cross over, but some things are specific on a room by room basis.
Yep.
So let's go through the house.
Sure. So the big one that we start off with is in the basement, because that's where all the big ticket items are, okay? So let's talk about your HVAC, your heating, ventilation, and air conditioning systems. All different kinds of systems all the time. Some of the things that we like to point out is, I mean, there's a life a cycle that all these things go through. We want to identify how old the systems are and stuff like that, so the client will know, what's the life expectancy of this? Is it end of life? You know what I mean? So you could have, we identify the fuel source, right? We'll look at that, the service, how the fuel source is provided, whether it's like a gas source or if it's electric, right, to all the major mechanicals. On the mechanicals, we'll take a look. Let's just use a forced hot air system for a second. We want to make sure there's an air filter system. We want to identify, where the shutoffs are for the gas or the electric. And we point all these things out to the client so that if there ever was an issue in the back, and listen, I get it. No one goes back, where's that home inspection report so I can know where the shutoff is?
Right.
But sometimes I really like this, especially with first-time home buyers, walk them through so they can see the important things. How do I shut off that furnace and stuff like that? So, boilers, you're heating up water and you're distributing water through the house. We want to make sure that there's no active leaks there. We'll look for certain oxidation on some of the pipes, which could be future leaks, stuff like that. Identify it. So that's pretty much like for the heating part of it. Hot water, same thing. A lot more people going with the on-demand hot water systems now.
I was going to ask you about
that. It's actually, they're great systems. Make sure you're maintaining. You got to flush these every single year, these on-demand hot water systems. So that's something that clients don't think of. They think they get that old 40-gallon they leave in the corner and it just runs forever.
Right.
Truly should be flushing these every once in a while too to get some of the corrosion out of it. But anyway, the on-demand hot water systems are really convenient. We'll identify whether or not they have the maintenance ports on those to make sure that they can flush those every single year. Make sure they're properly vented, make sure the pitch is correct on some of the exhaust systems that are coming out. You know what I mean?
That, please.
Well, into the weeds now, just like plumbing for drainage and stuff. Everything has to be pitched a certain way to make sure waste goes a certain way, and also that the exhaust goes a certain way. So it climbs, it goes. You certainly don't want think of a fireplace for a second. You certainly don't pitch your stovepipe down to make it go back up the chimney. So we look at the proper pitch and stuff like that to make sure that it's exhausting correctly. Okay. All right.
Cool. I didn't know about that.
Yep. Electrical systems. We'll identify the main shutoffs for the house. Of course, more times than not now with new construction, the main shutoffs are on the exterior of the house. Okay.
Oh, I didn't know that either.
Exactly. So it's a change, right? And in the panel, we normally, if it's safe, we'll take the dead front cover off that panel. We'll look inside, a few things we look for. We'll make sure that all the breakers are done correctly, that there's no moisture that comes in.
Right.
This is a big item that we see in some of the older houses. The wire that's attached to the outside of the house is supposed to have a loop in it. And what that loop does before it goes into the service cable, comes down the side of your house, that loop prevents water from following the wires inside the electrical jacket, which will come all the way into your electrical panel.
Oh, okay.
Water has a way of going in so many different directions, it's unexplainable. So we also look for corrosion in the electrical panel.
And when they're talking about the wire, when the wire comes down the house and it gets to the meter, there's what is the stuff that they put around that wire to prevent the water?
It is just a sealant. There's all different kinds, right? Whether it's a clay-based epoxy or it could be silicone stuff. But definitely something we look at. You know what I mean?
Right.
But and that's another way that water can get in. And as strange as it is, it'll follow that electrical jacket all the way to the inside.
Right.
We want to make sure that the electrical service is properly grounded. That's a big item. That's a huge safety issue that we're looking for all the time. Whether it's old school, that goes a wire that will connect to the old copper piping, whether it goes out to a ground rod, which is new construction, or even sometimes the wire will go into the rebar that's in the concrete footing itself. Okay, that's another way that they ground the system. So we look for proper grounding.
So, just because I experienced this once, should the panel be grounded to a gas line?
No, no, absolutely. Well,
I've run into that one.
Yeah, so it's nope. Yeah, that's kind of probably a no-no. Yeah.
So we don't want to introduce currents and gas lines.
So that's electrical, and that's the main downstairs panel. Of course, we'll end up going throughout the house, checking random number of outlets and stuff, make sure they're properly grounded. A couple other new features that are out there is we're all seeing, we're used to the ground fault receptacles that we see in our bathrooms and our kitchen and stuff. Nowadays, sometimes with the newer construction, they don't put those plugs in, but those receptacles are protected by newer technology where they have GFCI breakers in the thing, in the panel. Also, you're going to find arc fault breakers that are now, it's a newer, safer technology in the newer houses and stuff that we'll always, recommend, especially if there were remodels in certain houses. They should be bringing the electrical panel up to date with some of their remodels as well.
So what's the difference between those two?
Yeah, so I wouldn't do the electrician the justice to explain it correctly, but the arc is just something like, you'll see it, I would try to explain it, and
fair enough.
Exactly. I'd be in the weeds.
We'll have an electrician come on. He can answer that question.
Yes, exactly. We have one. Yes.
We do.
Yes. Yep. But some of the other things that we'll look at in the basement, we'll look at the plumbing, right? We'll look at the drain lines, and we'll look at the supply lines. We'll identify whether, like we were saying before, you're on city water, whether the meter is in the basement. More times than not now, they read the meter from the outside of the house or electronically, but there's still a meter in the house. We'll make sure that if that's grounded properly, right, there's a jumper that goes on that. Sometimes, like, I think it's greater than 50% in the state of New Hampshire, they're on well water, okay? So we'll look at their expansion tank, or they'll look at their water source, try to identify, make sure that the homeowner also knows how they turn their water off, whether it's public or that.
It's kind of an important piece.
It sure is. Yep. So we try to identify that for them.
I've told people for years when they buy a house and you identify where the shutoff is, I'm like, put a pink ribbon on it or something that's unique, so that if you're not home and you need to send somebody, you can say, just go down in the basement, you tell them generically where to go and look for the pink ribbon. There's not going to be a lot of pink ribbons hanging in your basement.
Absolutely.
In most cases. And that's the shutoff you're looking for. It's just an easy way for people to identify it.
Yep. And we do the same for, again, depends on what the mechanicals are or what the fuel source is that provides to the mechanicals. If it's gas, we try to find the shutoffs. We'll make sure that there are proper drip legs that are on all the fixtures and stuff like that. Electric, right? Normally in most cases, there's a separate panel sometimes to shut off the electrical water heater and stuff, kind of an old school thing. But we try to find all those shutoffs for them. And then if I go back to the plumbing again, the pitch of the drain. Sometimes the other thing is in New Hampshire, we have a lot of old cast iron pipes still that are in there. So we'll take a look at those seams and stuff, make sure there's no, it'll cause corrosion and stuff like that. And you just, as you put your hands on it and stuff, you'll see the condition of it. Right. You know what I mean? Also, you get the mix between the PVC piping and the ABS that's out there and how they tie in. Also, for the supply lines, you got a whole bunch of different technologies out there now. You have the PEXs, right? You have the plastic instead of the copper. And then, but there's still the old school in New Hampshire. You can find some steel pipe also providing water.
Oh, really?
Yes. So it's random.
I was going to say, I haven't seen a lot of that.
It's been out there still, you know, we still find those things. But yeah, we'll inspect those, active leaks, stuff like that before. That's basically, and I guess more important, we look at the structure in the basement. We want to make sure there's no cut floor joists, make sure the structure's correct, make sure that it's supported correctly, no deflections in the floor, stuff like that. So that's how we start off in the basement. We spend a lot of time in the basement.
I was going to say, that's a lot.
Yeah.
That's a big chunk of the house of the inspection is being done in the basement.
It sure is. Yep.
Yep. So now we go upstairs.
Yes. Yep.
I'm going to assume kitchens and bathrooms are probably the next two big items.
Yep. Kitchen, you know, we try to, we'll try to run the dishwasher, right? So you get a cycle there, then make sure it's operational. We'll go under the sink. Most of the times we're trying to find out to make sure that the dishwasher drain contains a high loop before it goes into the drain system under the sink usually, because that prevents odors and stuff like that coming from the dishwasher. We'll look under that sink. We'll make sure there are proper traps. Again, New Hampshire, there's a lot of old school, right, S traps and stuff. Now, you know, they call for P traps and stuff like that. So we want to make sure if it's not up to code, we just mention it to them so that they know that, hey, just so you know, the S trap that's been outdated, they recommend you come up to a P trap. It's just a maintenance issue that's at some point in time you might take a look at that.
It's not that it's leaking, it's not that it's not working.
That's right.
It's just, this is the new standard.
Yep, because it's been working for years. Okay?
Exactly.
You know, but yeah, so kitchen countertops, stuff like that. Make sure the backsplash is, installed. We look at the sealant. We're going to check make sure that all your kitchens and bathrooms have the GFCI outlets installed for your safety. You know what I mean? So if you're plugging in something and you're near a water source, it works correctly. We'll go through the bathrooms, right? And again, we bring our moisture meters with us. We're always checking around the tubs and the toilets. It's a visual inspection. I can't see what's below the floor, but based on where I step in a professional way to make sure that everything's solid, if I find some squishiness or if I see like some indicators that there's moisture, I throw my moisture meter on these things, you know what I mean? And make sure that there's no water intrusion in there. But we do thermal imaging as well. So sometimes what I can't see visually, I can throw my thermal up and see what's behind the wall and sometimes see moisture that I wouldn't be able to see with my own eyes.
So with the thermal imaging, does that also identify where maybe insulation may have compressed in the wall and it's no longer as efficient as it was? Does it show that as well? It
will. Now, of course, it's all different. When you throw it up there, it will absolutely show that what it does, it's all based on temperature.
Right.
So lack of insulation or even compressed or older insulations, you know what I mean, that aren't doing their job so much, you can see the temperatures that are actually through those walls to make a decision to say, hey, maybe I want to take a look at that later on to say, fill that back in.
Right.
But again, we'll go through the thermal actually helps me be able to see some of those items. But then we'll go like room to room. We want to make sure that all the windows, you don't have any broken panes. We want to make sure they're operational. It's not only is it for the convenience of letting the air in, It's to let you get out of the house in case there's an issue.
Right.
So we want to identify some of these things, such as the old houses that paint all the windows closed, okay? So, and we
or the windows that don't stay open.
That's another one.
And you have a little child.
Yes, exactly.
They can get seriously hurt by a window that comes crashing down on them.
Exactly. So room to room, windows, doors, make sure everything's operational. Floors, make sure there's no, holes in the floors and stuff like that. Make sure it's structurally sound. Handrails on the staircase, we make sure that they meet the standards on that. And then I guess another big one that actually happens all the time too, that's really important, is how our house breathes in the attic.
Yes.
Okay. We'll get in the attic, we'll try to figure out if it's got an access floor, right? Especially if there's equipment up there. Make sure there's the proper access to get up there. We want to make sure the insulation's correct. It all depends. Once we do our outside, we'll know if it's got continuous soffit and continuous ridge vent. We know that we want to make sure that the insulation isn't pushed tight to the roof sheathing.
Right.
We'll also look around whether the chimneys and vents all exit the exterior, make sure that there's no moisture intrusions there, stuff like that. And then we just point it out to them.
Nice.
Yep.
Well, that sounds like a pretty thorough inspection.
Yep.
So,
it's pretty, and I don't even think anything of it. It's sometimes like you try to explain it to all the things that are happening, but these are some of the benefits of why you get a home inspection. I look at things very weird. I see things, and as my family says, stop looking for a second, okay, and just enjoy the moment.
Right.
But I can't. I see certain structural cracks in drywall. I realize there's a problem there, so I'll point these things out.
Yeah,
so,
I love it.
Yep.
I love it. Mike, we're about done. This time went by super fast.
Sure did.
And thank you so much for coming on the show and sharing the wealth of knowledge about the home inspection. And I'd love to have you come back and kind of dig in deeper to some of the things and go over that a little bit more in depth that we didn't get to today. So,
absolutely. It was
awesome.
a pleasure.
Well, thank you so much for being here. And that's going to wrap us up for today. And we'll see you all back next week.